move the motion.
Thank you. Yeah, moving the motion.
And you have 40 minutes.
And I'm sharing my time with Deputy Richard Boyd Barrett, Seamus Healy, Catherine Murphy, John Halligan, Tommy Brahan and Patrick Nolte.
Very good.
Okay.
Is that agreed? Sorry.
Is that
yeah, it is.
As deputies will be aware, there was an extremely important judgment this morning in the High Court. This judgment was made in relation to a case in which I, as an elected member of the Dáil Éireann, challenged the constitutionality of the promissory note arrangement made by the late former Minister of Finance in December 2010. The basis of the challenge was that some €30 billion in public funds was appropriated without a vote in Dáil Éireann. I believe the judgment of the three judges today was a monumental decision and has huge implications as to the rights and power, or lack thereof, of the elected members of Dáil Éireann. In light of that, I urge all deputies to carefully consider this judgment. If the full 68 pages are too much, I refer the deputies to paragraphs 143 of the judgment and then refer back to paragraph 10. And I would like to read into the record those two paragraphs. Paragraph 143. The Court accepts as the definition of appropriation for the purposes of Article 11 of our Constitution that proposed by Alexander Hamilton in respect to the parallel provisions of the US Constitution, namely that the appropriation must be for an object, to an extent, and out of a fund which the laws have prescribed. Applying that test to the present case, it can be said that the objects of the appropriation under the 2008 Act are clear and satisfy the requirements of Article 17(2) of the Constitution. Section 612 of the 2000 Act further provides the payment comes from the Central Fund in the manner envisaged by Article 11 of the Constitution. The extent of the payments are also clear. While, of course, the Oireachtas did not know precisely the sums which were at stake when enacting the 2008 Act, it laid down principles and policies in Section 2 and Section 6 of the 2008 Act, which circumscribe the extent of the Minister's discretion to provide financial support. And then paragraph 10, Section 1, states, the Minister has, in the public interest, the functions provided for under this Act because, after consulting the Governor and the regulatory authority, the Minister is of the opinion that A. There is a serious threat to the stability of the credit institutions in the state generally, or would be such a threat if those functions were not performed. B. The performance of these functions is necessary in the public interest for maintaining the stability of the financial system in the state. And C. The performance of those functions is necessary to remedy a serious disturbance in the economy of the state. So what this says is the money appropriated, 30 billion, was for a purpose and it came from the appropriate fund. This means in a quite wide range of circumstances, without any upward limit, a power to spend public monies has transferred from the Dáil to the Minister of Finance, and in my opinion, this has to be reversed. This gives the Minister of Finance into the past, the present and into the future the power to appropriate public funds without limit, without any reference to or a vote in the Dáil, provided it is for the purpose of bailing out banks. Now I want to come back to the issue of the promissory note. An important question in this debate is why the promissory note? If the government, or in this case the central bank, wanted to put money into Anglo and Nationwide, why did they not do so? The answer to this question is very important to this debate. The central bank could not extend emergency liquidity assistance to Anglo or Nationwide because the problem was not one of liquidity but of insolvency. This would have contravened ECB regulations. The government, the central bank and very importantly the ECB knew they were dealing with insolvent, non-rescuable banks. That is why the financial manoeuvre of the promissory note was resorted to. The government gave 2 busted banks an IOU which they could put on their books as an asset, making them technically solvent. The central bank was therefore free to extend the emergency liquidity assistance to them to the tune of €20 billion. The other question, which is very pertinent to this discussion, is why did the ECB, the central bank and the then government engage in this manoeuvre? Was it a mistaken, ill-judged attempt to rescue 2 failed banks? No. This was done to satisfy the demands of the European Central Bank that the bondholders of Anglo and Nationwide be paid, and be paid in full. And the reason for that, Minister, was to protect the European banking system. The ECB was in it up to their necks, and they should be under tremendous, enormous pressure. They have very serious questions to answer regarding their role to these events, but they are not, because this government has failed. This government has failed spectacularly to ask those questions. What this motion proposes is what this government, if it was to fulfil the promises made in the 2011 general election, should have been doing over the last 2 years. That is, to expose the role of the European Central Bank in transferring a huge and disproportionate part of the cost of saving the EU banking system onto the backs of the Irish people. They should be putting forward clear and, in the circumstances, perfectly reasonable demands for the removal of the burden. The transfer of the promissory note into bonds held by the central bank is neither here nor there. Every year, for the next 40 years, $2 billion is taken out of our economy and destroyed. That $2 billion that cannot be used to solve problems in our health services, to provide jobs, to build homes, to develop our education system, to provide SNAs in our schools. All these issues, that $2 billion will not be used for that. To put an extra bed in a hospital, it will not be used for that. I move this motion on behalf of the technical group with the support of other deputies in the Dáil, and I would like to commend the Ballyhay Says No campaign for their relentless campaign on this issue over the last 2 years. I salute them and their actions in Ballyhay every Sunday, and their actions in going to Europe to ask questions that this government should have been asking over the last number of years, and that is to write down this debt that is not our debt.